Welcome to episode 13 of the Drive podcast. This episode will be about sharing your story. To find today's podcast and associated links, please go to teachingfromhere.com/podcast and then scroll down to episode 13. I would love it if you would take a minute to leave a rating for the podcast as well. This gives me helpful feedback. Thanks for listening and enjoy the drive.
On the road again, going places that I've never been, seeing things that I may never see again. I can't wait to get on the road again.
Welcome back to the Drive. It's we're rebooting this guy. We had the at the end of the fall semester, which got very hectic with my graduate studies, and then Christmas, which equaled me not doing anything. It's terrible. I hate to say it. I did a lot of non-hard work over Christmas break, which was probably good for my body and soul. But I'm back. It's a new year. It's a new thing. It's the spring 2016 semester. Life is great, so I can't complain. One of the cool things that I was able to do last year, I started a podcast. I started my own website officially instead of using a WordPress hosted website, and I poured 33 hours into my PhD, which is really amazing when you sit and think about it. So it was a crazy year, and it went by really fast. The other thing that was really big that happened last year was stepping out of what I had known and was comfortable with for almost 20 years to take on a new challenge where I didn't know what the future was going to hold. So in my classroom, I knew about what I was going to run into every day. I knew about what I was going to work with every month. I knew about what I wanted to accomplish from one year to the next. And doing that was comfortable, and it wasn't always easy, but I always sort of knew about what was coming. One of the things that's great about teaching is that every year is different, which is true. But every year is also the same, which is true, because teaching and learning and students, they just kind of all go into that pot. Sometimes the pot turns out a lasagna, and sometimes the pot turns out a cake, and so it's all cooking. But sometimes those flavors are different, and that's one of the fun things. You just never know what you're going to get. And along the way of the past year of change in my life, I would encourage every teacher to explore change, to explore different ways to do things, different ways to examine things, different ways to think about things, to ask yourself, am I doing this lesson because I've always done this lesson, or am I doing this lesson because it's a good way to teach this material, or am I doing it because it's comfortable, or ask yourself some of those questions, and then ask yourself, what am I doing with that lesson to help other people? Like, is this a lesson that could benefit somebody else in a different situation similar to mine? Could I share this lesson through Facebook or Twitter or Pinterest or some other social media and benefit another teacher? Can I get feedback on this lesson from other people? What is it that you're doing in your classroom, and seek input and help and ideas from others. And where I'm going with that is that's a scary thing to do, to put your teaching out there, to share what you do and to seek input and to try and discover kind of where your holes are and what you're good at and what you're not good at, and things that you may want to improve on or not improve on, or things you thought you were doing great when somebody else looks at your lesson and goes, holy smokes, what about this, and this, that because you were so comfortable you just forgot to think about, or it didn't occur to you. But sometimes in your daily routines you get comfortable with whatever, and there are those things that kind of slip through the cracks. And the moral of the story is this: teachers are so incredible, so amazing, and they work so hard all the time. A good teacher never shuts down. And I think, if you're listening to this and you're talking to other teachers, then all the time you're always thinking about what to do better, what to do different, what to change, or you're just constantly thinking, is this really what's best for kids? And I know that inside of our classrooms and our buildings, we do a lot of conversation back and forth amongst each other. I try to avoid the teacher's lounge sometimes because I could, negative Nancy could get in there and we share too much back and forth sometimes, and it becomes very self-defeating and very negative and all of that. But I've also been in teacher lounges, which have been great, fun places to hang out. In fact, at my last school, got in trouble a couple times at lunch because we were a little too loud and excitable. But that was fun. The point is this: you work hard as a teacher. You do amazing things as a teacher. You reach students that nobody's reaching. You do things nobody's doing, or you're looking to try those things. So my challenge to you is to share your story, to share what you do, to share your passion, to share your successes, to share your failures, to share your concerns and worries, to share your great, glorious, amazing days, to share those experiences where you reach the kid that you've been trying to reach for 5 months and you finally were able to get in there, to share the struggles you're having with reaching this particular student, and you've tried this and done that, and what can you do? Share your story. Share your story, because through that shared experience of sharing your story, we allow ourselves to we allow ourselves, number one, to share with the world what we do. A lot of times I think teachers are, people have an impression of teachers that we show up at the schoolhouse at 7:30, we leave at 2:30 or 8:30 to 3:30 or something like that. And we get June, July, and August off where we don't do anything except hang out at the country club pool. And I know a lot of teachers, and I don't know a lot of teachers that go to country club pools unless there's some sort of cool perk they're getting through a spouse's position. And so by sharing what you do, you are able to make people more aware of what actually goes on in the classroom. By sharing how you're trying to reach your students and what you're trying to do to engage your students and what you're trying to do to change the world your students live in and to open their eyes to all the cool things that are out there, you allow people to understand how hard you work as a teacher, that you really don't just show up at 8:30, teach all day, and leave at 3:30. I know that there are elementary school teachers out there who probably work 80 hours a week, and so much of that is spent on their classrooms and decorating and hanging things up, and I am so thankful for that. I could never be an elementary school teacher, but my children have had the best elementary school teachers. Their rooms are amazing. They're so fun. I walk in and I sit at that little desk with my knees touching my chin, and I am so thankful for the teacher that I'm talking to. And I can't tell you the impact they've made on the lives of my kids. But they need to share that story. They need to share their passion, and they need to share what they're doing so that the world knows what they are working on. As you elementary school teachers, as you're putting together your really cool wall in the hallway to show off all the student work and the fun things, take some before, during, and after pictures and put them on social media and talk about how you created this, where you got the idea from, here's how you did it, here's why you did it, and let others have that window into your world. Is it going to take some time to do this? Yes. Do teachers, are they strapped for time? Yes. But one of the things that I started doing as a teacher before I stepped into my doctoral studies is I started blogging. And yes, I wanted to. Number one, I wanted to. And I didn't know what I was going to say. And if you go back and look at my very first blog on this, it was absolutely horrifying. I should go back and delete it and make a new fake first blog. But the point is this: I took that step and started, and it's led me through that process to where I am now. And it also has allowed me to share what I did in the classroom, what I did with students, what I did with my thinking, what I did with my lessons. But I took control of my story that way. And I think that's why it's critical for teachers. We need to start taking control of our story. We need to share our story to take control of it so that other people aren't making assumptions that aren't true or that aren't defining your story for you. I don't want somebody else to define what I did in the classroom. I want to be able to have that choice. So my challenge then is to start a blog or a Facebook community if that's easier, and share what you do through social media. We live in this world now where it's easy for people in general, for political policy creators, for our elected officials. You see where teachers are often the brunt of a lot of what ails society. And in Oklahoma, where I live, we're constantly losing funding for various reasons. And I'm not saying that the legislators are doing it on purpose, but I'm saying that we're constantly losing money, and there has to be a way to change that. And I want to share my story through education to offset some of the perceptions about teachers that people live on, and that people read about, and that people understand as truth. I challenge that truth. And if every teacher that heard this podcast today shared this podcast with 2 people, and of those shares, they share with 2 people so that it grows, and each person that listens to this podcast does something differently to share their story. When I Google Scott Haselwood, I want to control what is going to, I want as much control over the results as possible. I found out there's another Scott Haselwood somewhere else. We look like we could be related, but we're not. But I want to have control over my career. I want to have as much control over my career as possible. I want to have as much control over my teaching as possible. So I'm going to I've created this blog, and I do things, and I put my name on it. And so when people Google Scott Haselwood, a lot of times they go to my YouTube channel, they go to my blog site, they go to some of my social media. So I'm able to define who Scott Haselwood is. So my question for you is, who can define who you are? Are you defining who you are? Are you sharing your story, your educational story, your educational work, your educational thinking? Are you sharing those items out there in the public space? Can we get to them? Are you tagging them, in social media with different hashtags to help people understand what it is that you do? I think if we can all collectively, as a profession, do this, yes, there'd be millions of blogs to read. Wouldn't that be great? Think of all the ideas that are just there. Would it be overkill? Quite possibly, yes. Who needs to read another teacher blog? But on the other hand, think about all the amazing things that we could share and the ideas that we could get from each other. Think about the story that you would be telling about what you do in the classroom, and taking away the opportunity for somebody else to tell the story of what you do in the classroom. And I think that's so critical in this day and age. Teachers have a voice. We have a voice. We should share what we do, how we do it, and we need to create a way for us to become this amazing, even more brilliant profession of teachers. I think that there's a lot of good things that can happen from sharing our stories, and I know it's scary, and I know that it can be challenging, and trying to do another thing is hard. But after you get started, I think you'll see that blogging and sharing what you do, it becomes part of who you are, and as a result, your teaching gets better because you really start thinking about what you're doing and why. And I think the result of that is better for kids, and it's better for learning, it's better for communities. And I think it's important that people know what teachers do and how they do it. I think it's important that people understand everything that goes on in the world of education, because there's a whole lot more. I've heard a couple different analogies to teachers. One is teaching is, being a teacher, the perception is the tip of the iceberg. People just see just that very top part. They don't see the rest of the iceberg that's under the water that's helping it stay afloat. They don't see all the football practices or band concert recitals or play practices or lunchroom duty or all these other different things that go on, lesson planning and things like that. They just see the top, the teaching part. The other thing that I like as well that I heard was the analogy of a duck on the water. Like, they look like they're pleasingly going along just fine through the water, while right underneath the surface their feet are going crazy, trying to push them in the correct direction. So I think teaching is like both of those. So that's my challenge to you today. My challenge is twofold. I would like for you to do two things. Number one, I would like for you to share this podcast with somebody else, this specific one. And I would like for you to start a blog. And as you do that, I really want you to share that with me so I can share that with others, so I can read your stuff, because I love reading what other teachers are doing. It just gives me a lot of enthusiasm to see the amazing things that teachers do. It's just awesome. So thanks for listening to The Drive today. Share with a friend. Start your own blog. Let me know that you've done that. And remember that no matter what you do in education, you make a difference in a child's life. And you may not know what that difference is for years and years and years and years,